What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today I'll be talking about the backlash from Casualty's school shooting episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Casualty aired an extended episode last Saturday. It was entitled Wednesday's Child, and it revolved around a school shooting conducted by Ollie Hide and his friend Rob. Ollie is of course the son of established clinical nurse manager David Hide, and it always stands out in my mind. Once this episode finished, I just sat there for a few moments just processing this episode, because I would honestly say that this episode is Casualty back on top form. It took a very controversial subject and through exceptional acting, writing, directing, they pulled off a really tense and emotional story which will really leave the viewer thinking. And that was great. I mean, if I had to pick a standout, it would be Jason Durr for the role of David. He was amazing throughout this episode. He brought so much emotion to the character. The most emotional scene in this episode, I would say, is when David is sitting by Ollie's bed, because Ollie ends up dying by the end of this episode, and just seeing his breakdown there, I mean, I had tears in my eyes, and that just shows that the actor really knows what he's doing. And I would say, having looked on social media, about 90% of the comments are praising this episode overwhelmingly. A lot of them saying the same thing I am, that this shows Casualty is back on top form. They knocked it out the park. They put a lot of care and attention into this episode, even though it was difficult viewing. They really did appreciate it. But there were 10%, there were the odd comments who said that this episode was very insensitive, and then the media latched onto that. Of course, the main reason that there was such a strong backlash in the media against this episode is because of contemporary events. Of course, not too long ago, there was a tragic school shooting in Texas, which of course is devastating. School shootings of any kind should not happen, but they do. And this episode went under review by the BBC because of the Texas shooting. It was postponed a week because it was just felt that it was too close to the Texas school shooting. Not enough time had passed. And then they even, when it aired the following Saturday, they pushed it back so it aired past the watershed, which, to be fair, this episode did have quite a lot of violence and it dealt with darker themes, so fair enough, you air it past the watershed. That was probably the correct decision. And the BBC did give a massive warning before this episode started. The media have highlighted certain comments online, basically saying that this episode was insensitive and, you know, it glorified the idea of school shootings, and they shouldn't have aired it. It was too close to the events in Texas, you know, it shouldn't have happened. But at the end of the day, school shootings are something which happen in society. You can't hide away from them. You can't block them out. There are people out there who reach a point in their mental health when they decide the only way out of it is to cause violence towards others. And I think that's why this school shooting episode struck a chord, because Casualty have done a school shooting episode before. The opening episodes of Series 25 revolved around a school shooting at Holby College. I think why this school shooting episode had more of an impact is because it involved characters which, as viewers, we've known for years. Ollie Hide has appeared in the programme for the last 7 years, and we've seen him grown up on our screens. So to find out that he's reached such a point that he now believes that he can just take his anger and revenge out on his peers and teachers, I think that's why it was so unsettling. And of course, this is a storyline which has been building up for months. You know, they've been building up the fact that Ollie is increasingly isolated. He's being bullied by his peers. He's become heavily influenced by his friend Rob, who is also a bit deranged. And that's why they both decide that the only way out of this is to conduct a school shooting. So I think that's why it upset some people, because it was real life. It highlighted that a school shooter, you can't look at them in black and white. You know, you can't, you're not, school shooters, they don't just wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to go and shoot up a school because I feel like it. Usually there are a number of influencing factors which make an individual do that. And I think that's what this episode dealt with really well. It highlighted that, you know, school shooters are not necessarily just madmen. Everyone has a breaking point. And with Ollie, it was how isolated he felt that he decided to do that. Not that I'm suggesting that school shootings should happen, because of course they shouldn't. But I think what this episode did, and I saw a lot of people, when people were commenting saying this episode was insensitive and, you know, it shouldn't have used the school shooting theme. A lot of people were then replying by saying, you know, if shows like Casualty didn't deal with sensitive topics, then they would never be discussed in the mainstream. And I think that's a really good point. Casualty is a show which has been built around sensitive and controversial topics. They've tackled infant mortality, rape, depression, even attempted suicide. So Casualty have dealt with controversial issues before, and this school shooting episode was no different to that. In my personal opinion, I think this episode was top tier Casualty. It handled its themes really well, and yes, it is difficult viewing. It will make viewers feel uncomfortable, but then again, school shootings are a very uncomfortable and taboo subject which aren't really mentioned very often. So I'm glad that a show like Casualty was brave enough to showcase that these things do happen and how they impact people's lives and the people around them. Now, I'm really looking forward to seeing the aftermath of this episode. It looks like it's going to be really strong. I mean, it looks like David's going to get blamed. He's going to become a scapegoat for all of these angry parents who have lost their children because of Ollie and his friend's actions, and they're going to take it out on David because David was his parent. Why didn't David do more? That's what they're going to say. So I think the aftermath of this episode, and this is going to be an episode which is going to send shockwaves through the ED for a very long time. So I can understand the criticism. It was filmed in January, so it was months before the school shooting in Texas ever happened. But I'm glad Casualty aired this episode, not only because it was first-class writing, directing and acting, but because it handled a very controversial issue in a very sensitive way, which isn't tackled very often. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed my rambling. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. Now, as I've said, I really enjoyed this episode, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it as well. So please feel free to comment down below what you thought of this episode. Maybe you agree with me or maybe you don't. At the end of the day, opinions are opinions. You're allowed to have yours, I'm allowed to have mine, and that's the way it should be. So I really hope you're having a good day, and I will see you in another one. See ya!